All right, I'm gonna really start going live in a couple or probably just seconds. I should be live. I am gonna check a couple of things here. By the way, happy Tuesday. This is Terry from terrymlee.com, talking about all things tech, especially with as it relates to your Kajabi site. And come on. It's been that kind of a tech day. I've had like 4 hours of sleep. And okay, that seems to be going okay. And so I am going to, let's see, get rid of my countdown here. And chat a little bit today. Since it is the holiday season, a lot of people, especially in business, will buy new computers, their laptop, desktop, or what have you, depending on where they are financially. And so I thought I would come on and talk a little bit about 5 things you should consider before you buy your next computer or laptop or something like that for your business. So there are some assumptions that I'm making that you probably will do some kind of video web live stream, even if it's Zoom, but maybe not necessarily Facebook Lives. And so those types of things. And so I'm looking for my notes. I am just really kind of all over the map today. I apologize. It has it's one of those days. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing you should consider when buying desktop or laptop is the ease of use. So if you're a Windows user considering getting a Mac, that's usually the transition. It's rarely Mac to Windows, but whatever your computer, laptop, desktop, it should be easy to use. Now, I know I made a career in Windows. That's what I did for 20 some odd years. And so when I got my first Mac, I was at the store like every other day asking them questions because A, it was a lot of money, and B, I just was very nervous. Like, would this be something hard to do? Even though I have a tech background, Macs were very foreign to me, and I was very worried that it would not meet my needs, or there would be something I missed, and all those things that go along when you're changing an operating system. And so I too had those. So if you definitely have felt that or are worried, give me a hashtag. I'm worried too. And I forgot to say that if you're watching this live, give me a hashtag live. Or if you're watching the replay, give me a hashtag replay to let me know. But I was very worried, and so I now own all Macs, so it definitely proved to be an easier transition than I thought. But in the beginning, there was a little bit of a learning curve, not too much. I didn't realize it at the time, but I things that were that I had to do a lot in Windows, I didn't have to do in the Mac world. It was just easier. I wasn't maintaining the hardware and computers like I had been. But we'll talk about Mac and Windows in a bit. But you want to make sure that whatever you're going to use is easy to use, and especially if you've been on a desktop and maybe you're going to laptop, it can be a little bit of a transition. Is the screen size big enough for you? Is the footprint, the physical using of the keyboard work for you, especially if you're going from a desktop to a laptop, regardless of operating systems? I usually recommend people go to the store, even if you don't buy it in the store, you buy it online, what have you. Go in the store, touch and feel the keyboards, make sure it works for you as far as screen size, how big can you make the font and what have you. The second thing is lifespan. Now, this is a big one that people don't think about too often. So the average lifespan of a Windows computer is about 3 years. It's not accidental that the warranties that you get on Windows, especially laptops, are 3 years. I used to buy and spec for agencies and businesses, and so they used to have 5 years. I don't even think you can get a 5 year warranty anymore. You might, maybe it's an extended warranty, but it's usually 3 years. And so you want to consider how long you will have the laptop. How long will it be a viable option? So even if it doesn't die, you have to consider, will it still power on? A very common problem in the laptop world for Windows is that the power cord connector will stop making that connection. It's less even about the battery, but about the connection. And the only way to fix that is to take all the innards out and replace it. And so that usually doesn't happen until year 4 or 5. And I speak from experience. I had a Dell laptop several years ago, and I did buy the extended warranty. I bought the 5 year warranty, and it just stopped charging. Now, even though it was like year 4, it was still fine, but and I could still run my apps, but it would no longer hold a charge. And so, excuse me, I apologize. I'm going to talk about that in a minute why I'm so tired. But what ended up happening is I had on-site, like I had a business warranty, and so I had on-site warranty. And so the gentleman came out and he took everything out and put it all back in. And I was like, is this the only way to fix them? He was like, yeah. He was like, this is a common problem. It's not about whether it's Dell or HP or what have you. It's just the way they're made. And the constant taking the power cord in and out, it just gets loose. And the only way to fix that is to take the innards out of the machine and replace it. It's called the system board, the motherboard. I know I'm geeking out a little bit, but the thing that everything is connected to, that board, that connection has to be replaced, and that can be rather costly. And so he said most people don't get that warranty, and so even if their laptop is still functioning, it won't hold charge. You can't charge up the battery so that it will last. And so in the Windows world, it's typical that the laptop functions, but you may have problems powering it. And so if you have the opportunity to get an extended warranty, I highly suggest it. Now, Macs, they come with typical, I think it's like 3 years with the Apple Care. They too want you to replace their computers, but what you're going to have less of an issue with that, with the powering, and less of, challenges with it lasting several operating system life cycles. So I have like a desktop. It's 2012 and it's 2019 and it's still functioning. I bought a used 2015 laptop and have that one. And then this one's a newer one. I think this one's 2017. But nevertheless, they are still functioning and last. And in fact, my friend of mine has a 2010 or 2009 operating Mac desktop. Now it's slow, but it's still functioning. And I think under the warranty that she had, the 3 years, like the hard drive on the inside of it had to be replaced, but it was under warranty. So in any event, lifespan and how often you replace them becomes a factor. And sometimes people think, well, oh, if I get a cheaper laptop or a cheaper desktop, it doesn't cost me as much but if you have to replace it, and I'm talking like from a business standpoint, sometimes the apps and things don't run on older machines very well. And so while you might be able to get like 5 years out of it, that's probably pushing it, at least in the Windows world. Much easier on the desktop side of things to have a longer lasting desktop, Windows or Mac, than laptops. That's just the way laptops are. Lifespan is something to consider. Now, the next thing is total cost. And so by that, what I mean is not just the computer itself, but the applications that you're going to need with it, or any accessories. So granted, I am not your typical person because I've got all this video equipment or what have you, but I was up until 4:30 last night with a friend remotely trying to troubleshoot a video card for using with Wirecast. Now, if you're not familiar with Wirecast, it's for higher end broadcasting, and so while I use StreamYard, you can use BeLive, and or if you're in the Windows world, there's vMix and some other solutions. Wirecast is like up here when it comes to not only cost but complexity, but capabilities. Like it's like the gold standard, but it's definitely a higher end solution. And so we have this older Windows computer that could run Windows 10, but the graphics card didn't support what the minimum requirements. And so while that may not seem like a big deal, you might say, I'm not live streaming right now. But what will you be doing within 3 years? Remember, we talk about the lifespan, and so that factors in. And so capture cards, the things that help you stream and all those other things beyond a webcam, like if you want to include a DSLR camera or some kind of external devices and all these other kind of geeky things, they add into the cost of the machine. And so while you're going to need them regardless of Mac or Windows, those cards run easily $200 to $300 for a capture card that helps you do some live streaming beyond, let's just say, a webcam. Whether you need adapters to connect to your computer. So while I like my Mac, Apple every so many years changes the interface, what you can connect. So it used to be that they had USB connections. They had this old, now it's considered old, FireWire. You have Lightning and all these other things, well, every time they change, I'm not going to change my mic every time. It's a USB mic. And so I don't think I can bring this up. Yeah, it's not going to be long enough. It'll disconnect my camera. I have like a little hub where I can plug my USB connections in, and then I plug it into the Thunderbolt connection that the Mac only has Thunderbolt. And so whether you're on laptop, desktop, Windows, Mac, sometimes those peripheral adapters and things like that start to add up. Now, hardware connections aren't all that expensive, but software can. And so I usually tell people you're going to pay one way or the other. While my Macs cost more on the front end, the software I usually end up needing costs less. Whereas in the Windows world, especially, I mean, if you're buying HP Dell or what have you, they have all that kind of bloatware that they include in it, you know, their HP stuff, their HP or Dell drivers, or not the drivers, but like their suite of application. But Windows itself doesn't really come with a lot. Like, it doesn't come with something that's going to help you create videos well. I mean, there's a basic video editor in there, but it's not really like my iMovie that's included with my Mac. If I want to create a PDF, that's default in my Mac. And while that may not seem a big deal, but when you're wanting creating freebie PDFs and things like that, needing Adobe Acrobat, and Acrobat's not necessarily an inexpensive program or something like that, it starts to add up. So I always recommend people to really lay out what software, and not necessarily the ones that are online, but software that you download, install on your computer. The Office suite. I don't really use that because everything that I need, the Apple Pages and stuff like that, is already included. And if it's not, I can just use the Google suite of apps for free. And so lay out all the things excuse me, that you need for your to run your business, to create your videos, to create your products, what have you, that connect to your computer, excuse me, that you might need, because that does add up in the overall cost of your computer. So the next thing to consider is definitely the operating system. Now, like I said, I was up until 4 something in the morning fighting with Windows, and every time we needed to change, I was working with my friend remotely. We were using TeamViewer, and I'm logging in, trying to help her troubleshoot, install drivers, and figure all this stuff out. Every time it had to, we had to do something, we had to reboot. And I haven't really run Windows now in a couple of years, except for like some troubleshooting or something like that. And so I had kind of forgotten, like, to me, how painful it is. But you can definitely tell, yes, I'm pro Mac. But if Windows works for you, then use it. But I would tell people to look to see, when you go to a webinar or you're on somebody's live stream or Zoom or what have you, and they're displaying things, if they're in your same niche, consider what computers they're using. It's not the finite or the final decision, but there's usually a reason, and we if you haven't used the Mac, yes, it's great for graphics and video and all that other kind of stuff. But beyond all of that, I just don't find myself maintaining the computer. And until I experienced it, I don't think anybody could have convinced me of it. Like, I was just adamant. Like, I was, Macs suck. They're too expensive. Why does it cost so much money? They're just like blah 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 blah. I was just like furious about it. And then I experienced it. I found that, oh, I'm not rebooting every 10 seconds, or oh, I'm not applying these updates every couple of days, or if there are some updates, I'm still not rebooting. I can keep working. If I'm having going live, and things do happen when you go live, I don't have to reboot to typically solve them. I can unplug and replug, and the computer reacts to that and will reconnect. So, like if it disconnected from a camera or if it disconnected from a mic, it's the subtleties that make my life easier, and I'm not maintaining the hardware, the computer, but I'm using the computer to do what I want. And so there's just a difference. And so the operating system can matter in your day-to-day business life, that until you experience it, it's kind of, at least it's for me, it's a little bit challenging to convey. But find what works for you. And I know, just like we talked about total cost, you can get cheaper laptops, let's say in the laptop world. But my recommendation is, don't buy the bottom of the barrel, and you don't need to buy the top end, unless you just really need that kind of power. I always like in buying a computer is similar to buying a house. So you don't buy at the bottom of the barrel, because if you need to resell it, people sometimes are just less likely to buy at the very low end. And when you're talking about appreciation, and we all know that computers depreciate, where houses appreciate, but in the higher end, there's kind of no place to go. It'll appreciate less if you buy at the top end. So sort of buy in the middle. And your operating system will determine kind of your total cost in that. And so the last thing to consider are your specs. Now, that's your memory, that's the speed of the computer, that's the video card, and that's very important, especially in laptops. Typically, once you buy the video card, you're stuck with it. In laptops, you can typically upgrade memory, but video cards, and sometimes, and you can also update your size of your hard drive, but the processor, that's like the engine. You don't just say, I want to get a whole new engine in my car, because that's very expensive and it never really kind of works quite right. But so you can replace tires, you can replace other things in a car, but the engine, that's the processor speed, usually in hertz, 2.4, 3.2 gigahertz. That's the processor. That's how fast it goes. Memory becomes important, because that has to do with how many things you can run at the same time. And then some applications are just memory hogs. That's just how they run. And so if you are doing something that is memory intensive, like I'm thinking video streaming actually is memory intensive. AutoCAD, for those that do that kind of work, is memory intensive, and video editing, the actual, well, partly the editing and partly what they call the rendering, where it actually creates the video. That can be memory and processor intensive. And the speed of your hard drive. So a lot of times you may, especially in the Windows world, they give you all these choices that just overcomplicates it, in my opinion. But you have SSD, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but SSDs are faster. So think of it as like a mouse on a wheel. He's only going to go but so fast. It's the difference between a Yugo engine or a smart car engine and a Maserati. It's got lots of horsepower in that Maserati, and that part of that's the processor, but the hard drive has little spindles or things that how fast you can write and read, put or save, get or retrieve your information. So the faster your hard drive, the faster your video rendering, the less time you have, less problems you have, even with live streaming, if you're recording to your computer at the same time that you're live streaming. So the speed of the hard drive. So if you're getting a desktop and you're looking at something, I guess they still make 5400 hard drives. I haven't looked. 7200, you'll see this RPMs, revolutions per minute, how fast it can spin. The faster, the better. But I always tell people in order of preference, like if money is tight and I say, where are you going to put your money? It partly depends on what you're doing. If I'm a video editor, memory and disk speed are critical. So I can replace the memory later and upgrade it. My disk I could replace later. So processor in any scenario, Mac or Windows, laptop or desktop, typically the processor you don't replace. So you might want to spend a little extra money on your processor. And then once I say, okay, this is fast enough for me now, in 2 to 3 years from now, because I'm not buying at the bottom and I'm not maybe buying at the very top, but my processor speed is somewhere there in the middle, but maybe I bump it up a little bit more, I'm going to be able to still run applications that will need more oomph later on. And then if I the next thing down that maybe I want to look at is, can I get a little bit more memory? So Windows computers, desktop or laptop, usually only have like the bare minimum. And when they say, 4 gigs or maybe even 8, that's usually for a single application. If you need to start running several applications at the same time, you're going to need to increase memory. Like, I don't buy anything less than 8 gigs, especially on a laptop, because laptops need a little bit more. But 8 gigs would be the absolute minimum. In the Mac world, the minimum is already 8. So if you need a little bit more, you could boost that up. And then, so disk space, memory, or processor, memory is something. But I would also look at the graphics card. So for those that live stream and do video stuff, and I think any business today should be doing those things to connect with their audience and increase engagement, that I would definitely maybe bump up my video card, but that may be kind of the last thing that I would do. And so let me change. So those are kind of some of the things with the specs. I know I'm kind of geeking out here, but definitely if you have any questions, definitely leave me some comments. If there's something in particular you're looking at, I'll be more than happy to answer that. And so the last thing I want to leave you with is definitely join my Facebook group. I talk about more things than computer hardware and geeky stuff like that, but about building an online business, doing it kind of the easier way, in my opinion, with everything all built into one so that you're focusing on your content and your marketing, but the tech headache kind of goes away. So I hope you found this helpful. Definitely leave me a comment, thumbs up, thumbs down. Yeah, I need more stuff like this, or you lost me. Just give me some feedback and let me know what you think. And otherwise, have a wonderful day. Bye.